Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about one of the most shocking and chaotic moments in Russia's modern history, the massive explosion that destroyed the Crimea Bridge. This wasn't just an attack on infrastructure. It was an event that sent political shockwaves through Moscow and changed the course of the war. The images from that night spread across the world within minutes, showing fire, destruction, and disbelief on a scale that no one could have imagined. The explosion didn't just damage a bridge, it tore open the illusion of Russian control and stability, leaving the nation in total chaos. The Crimea Bridge, also known as the Kerch Bridge, is more than just a piece of concrete connecting land. It's a symbol of Russian power. Built after the annexation of Crimea in 2014, it represented Putin's triumph, linking mainland Russia directly to the occupied peninsula. For years, it was guarded, celebrated, and showcased as a national pride project. But in a single night, that pride turned into a nightmare as massive flames erupted. Sections of the bridge collapsed, and Russia faced one of its most embarrassing moments of the war. Eyewitness videos showed a fiery explosion lighting up the night sky. Cars and trucks stopped in panic, and within seconds, a giant fireball engulfed a section of the bridge. Thick black smoke rose into the air as the world realized what had just happened. Russian authorities quickly shut down traffic, and emergency teams rushed to the site. But the damage had already been done. The bridge's structure was severely weakened, and part of it had collapsed into the water. The immediate question that followed was who did this and how. Russia blamed Ukraine within hours, calling it a terrorist act. Ukraine, as usual, didn't officially claim responsibility, but celebrated the moment with thinly veiled hints. Memes and posts flooded social media with the same message. The bridge that once united Russia's occupation was now burning. For Ukrainians, it was a moment of satisfaction, a powerful response to months of bombings and suffering inflicted by the Russian military. Experts quickly began analyzing the footage and satellite imagery. Theories started spreading. Was it a truck bomb, a drone strike, or something more advanced? What was clear was that this was a precise and well-coordinated attack. The bridge's security systems, cameras, and checkpoints failed to prevent it. Even Russian analysts admitted that such an explosion couldn't have been random or accidental. It was a blow not just to infrastructure, but to Russia's pride and image of invulnerability. The Kremlin went into crisis mode. Putin appeared grim, promising swift retaliation. Russian state media struggled to shape the narrative, avoiding words like failure or attack, while showing images of the burning bridge. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. One of Putin's most ambitious projects, personally opened by him in 2018, was now in ruins. It wasn't just a bridge that collapsed, it was a psychological defeat. The attack had immediate military consequences. The Crimea Bridge served as a vital supply line for Russian troops in southern Ukraine. It carried weapons, fuel, and logistics to front-line units. With the bridge damaged, supply chains were disrupted, delaying reinforcements and weakening Russia's operational strength. Ukrainian strategists knew exactly what they were doing, targeting not just a structure, but a lifeline of Russian warfare. Meanwhile, in Crimea and southern Russia, panic spread among civilians. Long lines of cars formed as people tried to flee, fearing further attacks. Social media was flooded with videos of explosions, fires, and traffic jams stretching for miles. Local authorities urged calm, but fear had already taken over. Russia, which had always projected control and stability, now looked shaken and unprepared. The world reacted quickly. Western leaders called the explosion a major escalation in the war. Analysts described it as one of Ukraine's boldest and most strategic moves. It demonstrated not only Ukraine's military capability, but also its confidence to strike at the very heart of Russian pride. Global news networks replayed the dramatic footage over and over again the moment the bridge exploded, the flames reflected on the sea, and the chaos that followed. It became one of the most watched war clips of the year. In Moscow, Putin faced growing pressure from hardliners who demanded revenge. They called for massive strikes on Ukrainian cities, and within days, Russia launched one of its largest missile barrages since the start of the war. Dozens of Ukrainian cities were hit, and civilian casualties mounted. But even with the retaliation, the psychological damage to Russia couldn't be undone. The image of the burning bridge had already become a symbol of vulnerability and resistance. Military experts noted that this explosion changed the strategic map. The bridge's destruction forced Russia to reroute supplies through longer, riskier paths. It stretched their logistics thin and slowed down their operations. This also emboldened Ukrainian forces, who saw it as proof that even the most protected Russian assets could be reached. The morale boost for Ukraine was undeniable. For the first time in months, they had struck a target that mattered deeply to Moscow. The symbolism went beyond war strategy. The bridge was a political statement, Putin's personal project that signified dominance over Crimea. Its destruction was a direct challenge to that dominance. The images of the burning bridge quickly circulated across Russian social media, despite censorship. Even within Russia, whispers of doubt began spreading. How could such a heavily guarded structure be hit so easily? What did it say about the country's defense systems and leadership? In the following days, Russian engineers tried to assess the damage. Some parts of the bridge were reopened for limited use, but experts warned that the structure was weakened. Repairing it would take months, maybe longer, and it would never again carry the same sense of pride. Every vehicle that crossed it from then on would do so under the shadow of that explosion. International reactions remained mixed. Some nations expressed concern over escalation, while others quietly praised Ukraine's boldness. The United States and NATO emphasized that Ukraine had every right to defend its territory, while Russia accused the West of supporting terrorism. The tension in global diplomacy rose sharply, and everyone knew the war had entered a new, unpredictable phase. For the Russian people, the explosion was a wake-up call. State media could hide certain truths, but not this one. The images were too vivid, too powerful to suppress. Online discussions turned bitter. Some questioned the government's control, while others demanded harsher action. The sense of national pride that surrounded the Crimea Bridge was replaced with anger and confusion. Meanwhile, Ukraine celebrated quietly but proudly. Officials released cryptic statements, and citizens lit up social media with emojis of fire and bridges. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. The bridge that once symbolized occupation now symbolized resistance. The explosion was not only physical but emotional, a strike deep into the heart of Russian power. As days passed, satellite photos continued to show the aftermath: twisted metal, scorched pavement, and a dark scar across the sea where the explosion had ripped through. Repair efforts faced constant setbacks, from logistical issues to fears of another strike. Russian forces increased security, but the damage had already been done both to the bridge and to the Kremlin's image of strength. The phrase "total chaos" described the situation perfectly. Between the explosion, the supply disruption, the public reaction, and the retaliations that followed, Russia found itself spiraling into confusion. Every move from that point had to be defensive, reactive, and cautious. The bridge attack forced them into a corner, showing that control was slipping. In military terms, the destruction of the Crimea Bridge was not just tactical but symbolic warfare at its finest. It showed that Ukraine could hit back, that even Russia's most secure assets were vulnerable. For the rest of the world, it was a reminder that this conflict was far from over, and that every day carried the potential for something even more explosive. Months later, the event is still remembered as a turning point, the night when Russia lost its sense of security and Ukraine proved its strategic ingenuity. The blast was not only a sound of destruction, but also a declaration of defiance. It told the world that symbols of power can fall, that the impossible can happen, and that in war, perception is as powerful as weapons. The explosion that destroyed the Crimea Bridge marked a new era in this conflict. It reshaped military strategies, political narratives, and public perception. It showed that no structure, no symbol, and no regime is beyond reach. The flames that night didn't just burn steel and concrete, they burned away the illusion of invincibility that Russia had tried to maintain. And as the world continues to watch, one thing is certain: the chaos that began that night is far from over. The bridge may one day be rebuilt, but the fear, humiliation, and symbolism of that explosion will remain etched in history forever. It was more than an attack. It was a message, and that message changed everything.